Hi, this is Rob Sheen from the Source Conference, and I'm here with Dan Cornell, who's the CTO of Denim Group. And he's going to be talking at Source Austin on December 5th and 6th, and he's talking on enumerating enterprise attack surface. Now, that's an interesting topic. I liked when I saw that proposal come in because, in my mind, if you think you're secure and you're not, that's actually worse than not having any security at all in a lot of ways. And I've definitely seen a lot of situations over the years where organizations and big companies, especially, just have no idea what they have. So, how widespread of a problem has that been for you? Have you seen?
It's been it's a huge problem, which is why I've spent some time looking into it and researching it. You go into organizations and ask them, how many applications do you have, and they've got a vague idea. A lot of people just throw up their hands and say, I don't know. I've been in terrifying meetings with organizations where we're like around the table, members of the organization get in arguments with one another and discover new things that they had. We're like, no, that's end of life. We're like, oh no, we've still got
Mm,
that running on the server for this one customer. So it's a real challenge if you go to if you go to a CISO and say, can you give me an Excel spreadsheet or can you give me a list of all the applications that you have? And a lot of times you get what we call the two shoulder salute, which is the so it's a real challenge for organizations, and especially again international organizations, groups that have grown up through acquisitions or divested portions of the business. Um, it's a real challenge.
yeah, no, I've definitely seen that myself. I been in threat modeling meetings where the first time they ever even saw an architecture diagram was when I drew them one, for
Right.
example. And I've definitely also seen I've facilitated sessions where you ask someone a question and you get an answer from one person, and then like you said, it starts an argument, and you have to kind of let them just sit there and hash it out, and you're like, all right, I'm going to sit here and get paid for watching you argue. That's cool. I said, but I'm glad you're having the conversation. you know,
Exactly. Right. I mean, there's value in that.
there is sometimes just holding that space for them to have that conversation is useful. So, what are some ways that you've found to help with this, to help people get ahead of this?
So I mean, there's some technical means, and that's one of the things I'll be going through is looking at a couple of open source tools, anything from like really straightforward stuff. You're running Nmap scans on known network addresses, um, as well as some other open source tools that help with like DNS enumeration or to search and look for like mobile applications and things like that. All the way over to less technical means, interviewing people looking at disaster recovery plans and things of that nature. And so looking at other parts of the IT organization and asking questions of different lines of business to surface stuff where the security team might not already have that, they might not have the information that exists in other parts of the organization.
Got it. So it's really a technical and process oriented
It's
thing.
what we found is it's usually like you work the problem from the technical end to learn certain things, then you work the problem from a non-technical end to try and figure out some other things, and by iterating, you're probably not going to get it's challenging to get to a perfect list, and especially because that list changes over time. But again, if you look at the problem from a couple of different perspectives, you can start to surface a lot of the information that you need, or certainly the type of information that's going to put you in a situation where you're much better informed than you were previously.
Awesome. Now, what are some of the areas of the attack surface that you've seen are like most likely often to be overlooked?
I mean, web, just the way that we interact with organizations, the focus is typically on the applications the organization is developing. And so, web applications, mobile applications, IoT systems where vendors are building those. And so, web applications are a great example of just things that proliferate, on the company's infrastructure, but also proliferate out in cloud infrastructure as well. So I think web applications is a giant problem, just because there are often so many lines of businesses that are developing applications, developing systems to serve customers and other stakeholders, and they don't necessarily centrally register those. We've also seen, to a lesser degree, but significant problems with organizations dealing with mobile applications.
Mm,
Where they have groups that are, again, a certain line of business is building, once a mobile application, they go and, outsource the development to a group because it's too hard to go through the central IT organization. And then all of a sudden, the app stores have, applications floating around out there that are, that exist as well. A real challenge that we're seeing now as organizations move, again, mobile, folks that are releasing IoT things, are the web services as well. And those are, in a lot of cases, a little sneakier than web applications because you can find, if you can find the web services, that doesn't necessarily mean you have a way to figure out what they're all about. Whereas a web application has a user interface, you can kind of crawl around, learn what group might be responsible for it. With web services, in a lot of cases, that can be a little more opaque on how to track down the responsible parties.
Right. Yeah, web services in particular, I've always found to be a little challenging for people, both from the discoverability point of view, but also just some interesting misconceptions about people that write them not understanding how we reverse engineer them. And they think that just because the API is not published anywhere doesn't mean that, people can't get into it anyway and that kind of stuff. So,
Exactly. And every organization makes the same mistakes that they made with web applications with web services, right? So if you looked at web applications, relying on security through obscurity, lack of authentication, lack of authorization. Most web applications kind of got that figured out. And they make the same mistakes all over again with APIs. And in a lot of cases, the APIs have only seen traffic from approved clients, especially like web services that are supporting mobile applications, that are supporting IoT systems. Those web services have only seen traffic coming from an approved client. They haven't been subject to adversarial traffic. So that's a real challenge. Like you said, where if you can find one of these, if you can start to reverse engineer how you think it might work, in a lot of cases, because they've only ever received friendly traffic in the past, they haven't been tested in an adversarial manner. You throw a little weird traffic at them, they start to fall down pretty quickly.
Right. So in a world of seemingly limitless technical debt, for the companies that are really far behind on this kind of stuff, how do they even begin to catch up on enumerating their attack surface?
Mm-hmm. And so, I look at it, the way I view it is you're getting started with an application security program. You're really answering questions of coverage, and coverage at two levels. At the one level is the coverage of your portfolio. And so that's where that enumeration process is really valuable to identify, here's our web apps, here's our web service, here's our mobile apps, here's other stuff that we've built. How good is your list of assets that you have from an application standpoint? And because that's important from a coverage standpoint to know what is my attack surface enterprise-wide, but then also looking at coverage from the standpoint of, for each of these applications, what level of inspection has been applied to them? How deep of testing have you done? And again, once you have that asset list, you can start to work on prioritization and start to have honest conversations with yourself or with other stakeholders in the organization to figure out what degree of coverage should we expect of the portfolio as a whole, and given applications, their exposure, the data, the severity of the data that they manage, and things like that. What level of testing inspection can you reasonably expect to apply to those? And again, you can look and say, well, we've got 500 applications. Realistically, most of those initially may only undergo some sort of a unauthenticated dynamic scan to find out if we have any really gross stuff hanging out there. And then for the things where we find serious problems or where we know that those assets are particularly valuable or expose us to risk, then you start to apply more rigorous testing to those. And so, it's really a challenge of getting that enterprise attack surface so that you understand how big the problem is, and then you can basically take what is our testing budget, divide that out in a risk-adjusted way, and then figure out what are the things we're going to be able to look at what level, and are there things where you simply aren't going to be able to look at those or can only offer the most minimal of inspection and testing of those assets. So again, it's the what comes out of the process might not make you happy, right? You might not be cheerful looking at the results, but at least you'll have a much better idea of the scale of the problem, and can then characterize that to make a determination of what are we going to do to address this risk that we know we're exposed to.
Right. Yeah. Step one of fixing anything is always knowing that you have a problem, right? So.
Right. From an attacker standpoint, I don't care if the asset is not on your asset list. If it's one of your assets, if it has access to your data, then from a goal standpoint, that is probably in bounds.
Hmm.
Again, as a defender, you need to know you need to know the game that you're playing.
Yep. Yeah, it's always interesting. I remember once upon a time doing an assessment, and we were hyper focused. They like by the client's design on a particular system, and we're like, well, what about this and that? And they're like, well, those aren't part of the project. It's like for us they are because we can
Right,
see
right.
them. And people need to be more aware that if it can be seen, it's a target. Period.
Right. Exactly. But we've also done work in systems. This is a slightly different thing, but where we've done threat models and they said we want you to ignore the risk of fraud. We're like, well, that's stupid. But in working with the organization and understanding their reasoning, like, no, we have other controls in place that are dealing with that, and we're willing to accept a certain
Hmm.
level of fraud in order to do this cool thing that we're trying to do. And so, again, there are trade-offs that that get made. The important thing is that you are in a situation to make those trade-offs in an explicit way. And
Right.
again, the knowledge puts you in a situation where you can make those decisions in a deliberate fashion, as opposed to having the decision made for you.
Right. Yeah, I have no problem with accepting risk as long as you know the risk you're accepting and you're accepting it
Right.
explicitly, right? A lot of folks
Right.
just implicitly assume a bunch of things, and like you said, you know,
Right. Yeah, and you may say, like, again, hey, we've got all these microsites done by lines of business and the marketing. Okay, well, we've got some brand risk associated with that, but realistically, we're not going to be able to get them all under a testing program. They're not sitting on top any valuable customer data. Like, okay, well then we'll accept that exposure for that for those assets, which we maybe don't like to do, but again, when you look at the resources available, you say we need to concentrate on these systems where we've got credit card information, health information, we already have that actual exposure, and we'll you know rely or we'll kind of ride out any brand problems we have. Just because those are believed to be in that particular case more ephemeral. Again, whatever risk management calculus the organization applies, let them apply that, but you've got to have the information in order to make those decisions.
right. Sounds good. All right, Dan. Well, I definitely look forward to continuing this conversation with you at Source Austin in a couple weeks. And so again, Dan's going to be at Source Austin in December 5th and 6th, and we hope you can all join us there. And it's going to be a good time. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Looking forward to it.
Great. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Thanks a bunch.